Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast. And welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
This is the tale of two boys in the woods. It's not my own tale, but it's a true tale. Some would say, no, not true. That's not how it happened. But it's how the other guy, the one who lived, explained it. They had been visiting a small place in Norway. About 350 people lived there at the time. I lived there. They were city boys, wanted to see the country, the woods, and enjoy a bit of beer and women. At one point, a third guy had joined them in their endeavor to enjoy themselves. Later, it was told that none of them knew who he was or where he'd come from, just that it felt right to have him there, like they had been missing a piece of a puzzle, and that the guy was that piece. Let us call the two friends Geir and John, and the third guy who no one remembers even seeing anymore for Seb. John began feeling ill one night. He told Geir that Seb was acting all weird and that he felt sick being near him. Geir laughed it off, but John became more reclusive and apparently refused to have Seb there anymore. Geir and John fought that day, and Geir told John to stay in the cabin and be sick all he wanted, because Geir was heading out to drink. However, while Geir was drinking, John joined him. It was about 27 below, it's Celsius Americans, and icy that day. John explained he didn't want to sit at home, that he was sorry for his behavior. When they left, John didn't get his jacket back, claiming he was fine without it. Now this is where it gets a bit tricky. You see, Geir swore John came home with him, that they shared a meal, and that John told Geir that Seb had left. Geir thought nothing of it until he was woken by a knocking at the cabin door. It was the cops telling him that John had been found floating under the ice under the bridge, and that his clothing had been found neatly folded in a crossing by a taxi driver, his shoes on top. Apparently, John had been dead for about 12 hours, while Geir knew he had spent time with John within that time range and told the police so. The police figured he was in shock, denial, that sort of thing. But Geir was adamant. There were 2 plates on the table, and John's bed had been slept in. But when Geir told them about Seb, they became very serious and began asking questions about Seb, how he spoke, how he walked and talked, that sort of thing. Geir willingly explained everything about Seb and was carted off to the mental hospital, charged for murder, but apparently too sick to stand trial. If I think back to that night, it snowed heavily, and the taxi driver found the clothing free of snow, neatly folded. If John died that early, there is no way those clothes wouldn't be covered with snow and impossible to see. So, what's your guess? A skinwalker seemingly gliding into their friendship seamlessly? Or just schizophrenia?
B17. I live in quite a small place in Norway. Been with my girlfriend for 2 months. One day she receives a blocked phone call. Does not answer. Calls again. Does not answer. Keeps calling. She finally picks up. Loud grinding noise, then hangs up. Stops calling for a while and she goes to sleep. The next day she turns on the phone. 38 missed calls. What .jpeg. Keeps calling all weekend. Grinding noise, then hangs up every time. Meet up with her one day. The phone rings and I answer. Voice on phone this time. Whispering my name, Anon. Grinding noise, then hangs up. No more calls for the night. Same calling with grinding, then hangs up for the rest of the week. My face when my girlfriend changes her number and doesn't tell anyone. Phone rings. Same deal. She thinks there must be someone messing with her. Someone has been calling about 93 times or so now. Everything calms down for a period of time. Be only a couple of days since I was walking my girlfriend home. Not a single phone call all night. Kissing goodbye, I head home. It's a pretty long walk and I see a toad. Pick the toad up and take it to a pond under bridge. Bad idea. JPEG. Hear mumbling voices echoing in walls. I back away. Went from light out till dark so fast. Hearing the mumbling all the way home. Outside my house finally. The voices goes from mumbling to loud talking. In every sentence the voice mentions me. Suddenly get phone call, blocked ID. Picks up and shout as quiet as possible. Who the fuck is this? No grinding noises, only me shouting. I froze, realizing the caller must be really close. I'm dead, ping, hearing my neighbor come outside. Hey there, Anon, and takes out trash. Hurry inside. I can't sleep all night. There isn't really more to it, but I am trying to find an answer to this. The number is also still calling my girlfriend. This is happening right now. I'll post more if more happens. I won't dare to go outside at the moment.
Be me, around 15 years old. Live in the basement of a house near an old German bunker. The bunker is in Norway from after the Germans occupied us in World War II. There are multiple doors in the house that lead into dark corridors. Brother once asked the landlord about them. Apparently they lead to the bunker. Go to sleep one night like I normally do. In my shower there is a hatch for steam to go out. Look over and see a pair of eyes. I go completely still for a minute, just staring back at the eyes. Turn off the shower and I can hear heavy breathing. Nope, out of there. Run up the stairs and into my parents' room. I won't sleep until one of them checks it out. Mom comes down and assures me that everything is normal. Finally go to sleep, lay down facing the wall and turn off the light. Some minutes go by, and then suddenly it's there again. Heavy breathing, but this time I can feel it on my neck. Neck gets moist. Pretend to be sleeping and lay completely still. Don't know how many hours go by. Wake up all sweaty in the morning. Was it a ghost, cryptic, or just a cat? I don't know. I am quite skeptical, but that has been one of the most messed up things I've experienced.
I lived in an old wooden house in Oslo from the time I was 8 to 10 years old with my biological father. My mom, stepdad, and I are Americans, real dad is Norwegian. The house was cottage-like, had no ceiling upstairs so you could stick your hand over the walls and hear everything that happened in the other 2 bedrooms. Walls were wood-paneled. It looked kind of shit but cozy at the same time. My room was long and narrow, had 2 windows along the side and 1 small window at the very back of the room looking out on the street. My bed was facing that window in the front of the room, pushed against the wall next to another window with a direct view of the street window. That was probably a bad explanation, but anyway. There was a ghost that used to hang out upstairs. I remember the air used to feel heavy at night, really creepy. About 4 or 5 times during my time there I saw the thing in the middle of the night. Depending on what position I slept in, he'd tickle me in different places so I'd wake up. If I was lying facing the window, it'd be on my upper back. If I had my back facing the door, it'd either be the back of my hand or front of my shoulder. Lying on my back it'd be the side of my upper arm, etc. The tickling wasn't like a real person tickling me, it felt like fingers made out of feathers. Cold feathers, if that makes sense. So I'd wake up and instantly look at the window in front of me and I'd see a whitish-gray misty figure blocking it. He had no features, was about average human height in roughly the shape of a human, swaying back and forth in slow mo, but steady like it was a person pacing from side to side. I could see the window directly through him. I always screamed like hell and darted into my dad's room. Dad told me it was a friendly ghost who was watching over me like a guardian angel, just BS to keep me sane. I wonder what his story was. Either way, glad I don't live in that creepy place anymore.
This was a couple of years ago, 4 or 5 if I had to guess. At the time, I still lived with my parents in the outskirts of Oslo, Norway. It's pretty much forest with around 100 houses and cabins scattered around. It was around this time of year, which meant that the moose were in their rut and more aggressive than usual. I woke up about 2 a.m. for some reason and couldn't go back to sleep for the life of me. After trying to sleep for half an hour, I decided to take the dog for a walk in the forest. Pretty normal for me and one of my favorite things to do in the summer. So I sneaked downstairs to pack provisions for me and my dog without waking my parents, get on my clothes and head out. It was about 3 a.m. when I went out, so it was pitch black, clouded and pretty chilly. I figured I could walk to a lake about 2 hours by foot and catch the sunrise there, maybe make a little fire and have a good quiet time. After walking for an hour, I started smelling what I imagined was musk. I figured that it was a moose trying to get some lurking about. So I moved my knife to the front of my belt, thinking that if some straw-legged creature was going to charge me, I sure as hell weren't going down alone. My dog started lagging behind me a bit by this point, but he was getting old, so I figured he was just tired. I had dragged the poor bastard along with me in the middle of the night as well. I kept walking, a bit cautious for moose and sounds, but I kept a good pace. After 15 minutes or so, the smell started getting stronger. By now, the moon had started shining through the clouds, so I could see somewhat further ahead. My dog suddenly stopped and just stared in front of us. He didn't growl or bark or anything. He just stood there with his ears raised, focused on something. I tried to follow his gaze and could suddenly see what he was fixated on. Well, saying that I saw it isn't really true. I saw more or less a silhouette of something. About 10 meters ahead of me, there was something big, really big. I'm about 190 centimeters, and whatever that made me feel small. If I had to guess, I would say it was about 230 to 250 centimeters tall and built like a tank. At that time, I froze as well. I wasn't really frightened, more like paralyzed and curious. It's hard to describe. As me and my dog stood there, the thing slowly started to turn. It felt like he had observed us and figured we were not a threat or something. As it turned and started walking, I could slightly make out its shape. It was bipedal and humanoid. It walked away slowly, seemingly without a care in the world. Both my dog and I just stood completely still and looked as it went away, until we couldn't hear it anymore. It was then I started to process the situation, as did seemingly my dog. After I had stopped wondering what had happened, I walked over to where it had been. There were no footprints or any signs that something had been there. I walked to the lake, made a fire, had some coffee and fed my dog, and walked home without anything else out of the ordinary happening. I still wonder what I encountered on that day.
Be me Norwegian 19-year-old student. Live at a place called Kringsjø, northern part of Oslo. Right next to a large forested area called Nordmarka. Usually take evening walks around a lake called Sonsvann. I'm just naming these places so you can Google them if you want. Anyway, as autumn continues, the evening walks get darker and colder. I'm a lazy, so sometimes I only get these walks done around 9 p.m. Fewer and fewer people on the trail. One night I get there much later. Around 11 p.m. I sense no danger and continue walking my normal round. I wear headphones. Norway is pretty safe. No problems. I suddenly get a strange feeling, like I'm being watched. I also notice it's way darker than usual, no stars, light fogginess around the lake. Partially frozen now. I feel this deep anxiety suddenly. Like I'm being watched and someone don't want me to go on. It causes me to halt completely and stop listening to my music. Every instinct tells me to go back. I decided to do it and head back. As I leave the forested area, I suddenly hear this heart-piercing shriek. It sounds like a little girl in absolute panic and horror, but it didn't awaken any protective feelings from me. I noped out of there and got back to my apartment. I read the next day that gypsy gangs were fighting in the woods that very night, including stabbings. They had lived there illegally and the city wanted them gone, but they kept coming back. Apparently rival families had fights with machetes and whatnot. No mention of girls being killed. I'm not sure if those are connected, but I have a feeling that they are. That's it, the scariest Innawoods thing I experienced.
Little story about my first and so far only false awakening. It was eerie. In 2010, I took the ferry from Kiel back to Oslo. I had the cabin for myself and went to bed around 21:30 as I was tired from a long day of travel. At the side of the bed is a wall-mounted nightstand where I put my phone and my black leather wallet. I fall quickly asleep and dream that I'm in my hometown walking around and it's carnival or something because many people are in costumes. A regular dream, nothing special. I wake up as there is a lot of noise and loud laughing from the corridor outside the cabin. Sounds like some people in their 20s are having a good time, maybe coming back from the bar. They speak Swedish, which I can understand as I speak Norwegian. My first thought is that I went to bed too early and now won't be able to sleep for the rest of the night. I'm thirsty. I get up and sit on the bed, feet on the ground about to stand up to get a glass of water, when I notice that the door to the cabin is cracked open and light from the corridor shines in. I think, so that's why it's so loud. But then I get confused, because I know I locked the door, and I know I had the cabin for myself. I look at the nightstand and notice that my phone is there, but my wallet is missing. And here something strange happens. I think, didn't I put it on the nightstand with the phone? And I go through it in my mind and have this memory seeing how I put my phone and my wallet on the nightstand.
But in this memory, my wallet is light brown and much thicker and bigger than the black wallet that I had. I get even more confused, wondering why the memory is not like it should be. I get the urgent feeling that something isn't right. Suddenly, I woke up. Again! I'm in the cabin and the noise from outside is gone. Total silence except for the rumbling sound of the ship's engine. But I didn't just wake up normally. My heart is pounding so hard that I fear I had a heart attack. My body is in shock. I'm completely stunned and confused for about 3 or 5 minutes before I'm able to move. The door is closed and on the nightstand lies my black wallet and my phone. I get up and check the door. It's locked. I'm not thirsty at all. I have never experienced waking up like this in my life. The worst feeling was inside the dream when I realized that the memory of my wallet was not right. Pure terror, like somebody screwing with your mind. Also weird, though I understand Swedish, I can't speak it. But my mind generated people who spoke perfect Swedish. I read stories of people who have these false awakenings all the time. Wake up, go to the bathroom, brush teeth, go into the kitchen. Kitchen is not right. Wake up again. Some people even have this multiple times.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.